there is a number the Pentagon almost never talks about in public. In 2018, a senior U.S. official let it slip. He said that over the previous decade, China had conducted roughly 20 times as many hypersonic weapons tests as the United States. 20 times. Not twice. Not 5 times. 20. And that was 2018. The years that followed made it worse. By December 2025, the U.S. Department of Defense released its annual China Military Power Report. The language was unambiguous. China, it said, possesses the world's leading hypersonic missile arsenal. That phrase had never appeared in a Pentagon document before. It was the first official admission that in the most consequential weapons race of the 21st century, the United States was not in front. This video is not about politics. It is about the weapons themselves. 13 distinct systems, built across 3 fundamentally different technologies, designed to do one thing: arrive at their targets faster than any defense in existence can react. Some of them you have heard of. Some of them were unknown to Western analysts until a single parade in Beijing changed everything. And at least one of them, according to American intelligence, came so far out of nowhere that it caught the entire U.S. defense establishment completely off guard. Here is every hypersonic weapon China has ever built. Chapter 1: The Glide Vehicle that Started It All. To understand what China built, you first need to understand the physics problem they solved. A ballistic missile is predictable. It goes up, it comes down, and the arc it follows is calculable almost from the moment of launch. Radar tracks it. Computers plot the trajectory. Interceptors are sent to meet it. The math works. That is why missile defense systems exist. They are built around this predictability. A hypersonic glide vehicle breaks the math. It launches on a ballistic booster, reaches the upper atmosphere, and then detaches. Instead of falling back to Earth on a fixed arc, it pulls up. It glides. It maneuvers laterally. The trajectory is no longer predictable, and the altitude between 40 and 100 kilometers sits in a gap that existing defenses were never designed to cover. Too low for exo-atmospheric interceptors. Too fast and too maneuverable for terminal phase systems like THAAD or Patriot. And to fly at these speeds, above Mach 5, the vehicle must withstand surface temperatures exceeding 1,500 degrees Celsius. That is the technical barrier China spent a decade solving. The weapon that came out of that effort was called the DFZF. American intelligence designated it the WU-14 when they first detected it in January 2014. Between that date and late 2017, China conducted at least 9 flight tests from the Taiyuan Satellite Launch Center in Shaanxi Province. One test failed, the rest worked. The DFZF can reach speeds between Mach 5 and Mach 10, and it maneuvers throughout its glide path in ways that make interception, with anything currently deployed, essentially impossible. There is a detail worth noting about the development program. According to Ye Yuda, a Chinese scientist who worked on the project, early development was slowed by one unexpected obstacle: inadequate supercomputing access. The team doing the most consequential aerospace engineering in the world was waiting in line for computer time. They solved that problem too, but a glide vehicle without a delivery system is just a prototype. China needed a missile built specifically around the DFZF. That became the DF-17. The DF-17 is a solid-fueled medium-range ballistic missile, approximately 11 meters long, weighing around 15,000 kilograms. Its booster design is derived from the DF-16. The range, between 1,800 and 2,500 kilometers, covers every U.S. military installation in the Western Pacific, from Okinawa to the Philippines, with time to spare. It was fielded in 2020, confirmed by the Pentagon's own reporting, and is now expected to replace older short-range ballistic missile units in the PLA rocket force. On October 1, 2019, the DF-17 was publicly unveiled for the first time, rolling through Tiananmen Square at China's National Day Parade. Western analysts had known it was coming. Seeing it was still something else. Chapter 2: Range and the Guam Problem. The DF-17 can reach Okinawa. That is a serious problem for the United States military. But Guam is further. Guam is where the strategic reserves sit, where the B-52s are based, where the logistics chain runs. And for years, Guam was, if not safe, at least beyond the comfortable reach of China's theater missiles. The DF-26 ended that. The DF-26 has a range of approximately 4,000 kilometers, enough to reach Guam from mainland China with a conventional or nuclear warhead on the same launcher, with no visible external difference between the two configurations. American war planners call this the ambiguity problem. If a DF-26 launches, you do not know, until impact, whether it is carrying a conventional strike payload or a nuclear one. That ambiguity is not an accident. It is a design feature. China operates somewhere between 250 and 400 DF-26 launchers. That is the largest intermediate-range ballistic missile force in the world. A single DF-26 brigade is assessed to have at least 25 launch vehicles, with each supported by 2 transport vehicles carrying 3 missiles in reserve. That means a single brigade can put 75 missiles into the air before it needs to resupply. In August 2020, the DF-26B, the anti-ship variant, demonstrated its operational capability in a live test, striking a moving target ship in the South China Sea after a launch from Qinghai Province. That is a distance of over 1,500 kilometers to a moving target at hypersonic terminal velocity. At China's Victory Day Parade on September 3, 2025, the DF-26D appeared publicly for the first time. It introduced canister launch technology and an integrated launch vehicle. More significantly, Chinese military officials described the DF-26D as incorporating hypersonic configuration designs similar to the DF-17. The Guam killer now has a maneuvering terminal phase, but range, even 4,000 kilometers, has a limit, and China's ambitions do not stop at Guam. Chapter 3: Beyond the Island Chains. In October 2021, the Financial Times published a report that landed like a depth charge in the U.S. defense community. China, it said, had conducted a secret test of a nuclear-capable hypersonic glide vehicle, not launched on a conventional ballistic arc, launched into low Earth orbit. 5 U.S. officials confirmed the details. The test occurred on July 27, 2021. A Long March 2C rocket, the 77th of its type, was launched without public announcement, while the 76th and 78th launches of the same rocket were disclosed normally. The glide vehicle circled the globe, deorbited, descended through the atmosphere at hypersonic speed, and struck within approximately 40 kilometers of its intended target. U.S. Space Force Lieutenant General Chance Saltzman publicly confirmed what the system was: a fractional orbital bombardment system, or FOBS, paired with a hypersonic glide vehicle. His words were precise. Quote, "A fractional orbit means it can stay on orbit as long as the user determines, and then it deorbits it as part of the flight path." End quote. This is not a ballistic missile. It is not a cruise missile. It is a different category of weapon entirely. The strategic implication is specific. The United States early warning radar network is oriented toward the North Pole because that is the shortest ballistic trajectory from Russia or China to American targets. AFOBS can approach from the South Pole. It bypasses every warning system the United States has deployed. The Pentagon assessed that the July 2021 test likely demonstrated China's technical ability to field a FOB system. As of this recording, no confirmed operational deployment has been announced. That does not mean it does not exist. The Vice Chairman of the U.S. Joint Chiefs of Staff, General John Hyten, described what happened in the test bluntly. He said, "They launched a long-range missile. It went around the world, dropped off a hypersonic glide vehicle that glided all the way back to China and impacted a target." When asked if it hit the target, Hyten said, "Close enough." At the same time China was testing orbital trajectories, it was also working a quieter approach, putting hypersonic weapons on bombers. Satellite imagery first revealed an unidentified large missile carried under the fuselage of a modified H-6N strategic bomber. U.S. intelligence designated it CH-AS-X-13. Later reporting, including photographs from July 2024, confirmed H-6K bombers carrying up to 4 of what analysts identified as KD-21 missiles simultaneously on wing, hardpoints. The bomber launch concept multiplies the threat in a specific way. China operates approximately 120 H-6 variants. Each aircraft can be repositioned to exploit radar gaps, approach from unexpected vectors, and release from outside the defensive envelope of a carrier strike group. The CH-AS-X-13 and KD-21 are believed capable of reaching Mach 10 at terminal phase. The H-6 fleet, armed with those, is not a bomber fleet anymore. It is a distributed hypersonic launch platform. Chapter 4: The ICBM that can sink ships. In 2021, the Pentagon's annual China Military Power Report mentioned a new missile for the first time. It was listed as in development. The name was DF-27. The description was brief: long-range, hypersonic glide vehicle. The report said nothing else. By February 2023, a classified daily intelligence briefing was leaked. It contained specific details. On February 25, 2023, the DF-27 had been successfully tested. The missile flew for 12 minutes and covered 2,100 kilometers, with a hypersonic glide vehicle as its payload. The leaked document also confirmed that variants capable of striking both land and naval targets had already been deployed, likely in limited numbers. By December 2025, the Pentagon confirmed it officially. The DF-27 was fully fielded as an operational conventional intercontinental ballistic missile. This makes China the first nation in history to field a conventionally armed ICBM. No other country has done this. The range between 5,000 and 8,000 kilometers reaches Guam, Hawaii, Alaska, and portions of the American West Coast, depending on payload and trajectory. Combined with the hypersonic glide vehicle, which maneuvers at above Mach 5 during its glide phase along a variable flight path, the DF-27 is effectively immune to every terminal phase interceptor system currently deployed by the United States. In April 2026, video circulated on Chinese social media showing a convoy of large transporter erector launchers, assessed by open-source analysts as probable DF-27 units, moving through an urban street, alongside ordinary civilian traffic, with no visible security perimeter. The message, whether intentional or not, was unmistakable. This weapon is not being hidden, it is being normalized. The 2025 Pentagon report also identified an anti-ship variant of the DF-27, making it the fourth Chinese ballistic missile capable of targeting moving warships at sea, alongside the DF-21D, the DF-26, and a newer system that would come to define China's naval hypersonic capability entirely. Chapter 5: Killing Carriers. The YJ-21 was publicly revealed at Airshow China in November 2022. It was carried externally under the wing hardpoints of an H-6K medium bomber, and what analysts saw matched what intelligence had been tracking for years. An air-launched, hypersonic anti-ship ballistic missile designed specifically to kill aircraft carriers. The numbers are not in a carrier's favor. The YJ-21 is reported to achieve terminal speeds of Mach 10. Cruise speed is estimated at Mach 6. Range, depending on launch platform, runs between 1,500 and 2,000 kilometers. At Mach 10, terminal approach from 60 kilometers away takes roughly 9 seconds. A carrier's close-in weapon system can fire approximately 4,500 rounds per minute. 9 seconds is not enough time. In May 2024, China revealed a bomber-launched variant and displayed an export version at Airshow China 2024. As of April 2025, the PLAAF officially confirmed the YJ-21 is operationally deployed with Chinese air forces. In May 2023, Chinese authorities published results from a simulated wargame in which they claimed to have used hypersonic missile strikes to destroy the USS Gerald R. Ford, the United States' most advanced nuclear-powered aircraft carrier. It was the first time China had publicly named a specific American vessel as the target of a strike scenario. Then came September 3, 2025. At China's Victory Day parade, marking the 80th anniversary of the end of World War II, 3 additional hypersonic anti-ship missiles appeared in public for the first time. None of them had been formally confirmed before that afternoon. The YJ-17 uses a boost glide wave rider configuration, with a flat warhead and a large booster consistent with launch from warships or land platforms. Its aerodynamic layout is closely derived from the DF-17, and Chinese officials had previously described an anti-ship version of that system in development. The YJ-17 is almost certainly what that was. The YJ-19 is different in kind. It carries a wave rider body with an air inlet under the fuselage and a large booster stage, marking it as an air-breathing hypersonic weapon, likely scramjet-powered, designed for sustained powered flight at hypersonic speed throughout its engagement envelope. This is a fundamentally different propulsion architecture from the glide vehicles. The YJ-20 uses a biconic aeroshell, a double-cone body shape that generates specific shockwave patterns for stability at hypersonic speeds. It was not just a parade display. In December 2025, the YJ-20 was observed being test-fired from the vertical launch system of a Type 055 destroyer, confirming integration with China's most advanced surface combatant. In a single parade, China's publicly acknowledged naval hypersonic arsenal went from 1 system to 4. Chapter 6: The Scramjet and the Waverider. Every system discussed so far, from the DF-ZF to the YJ-20, shares one characteristic. At some point in its flight, it stops accelerating. Glide vehicles coast on kinetic energy. They are fast, but they bleed speed as they descend into denser air. The terminal approach is the slowest part of the flight. That is the window, narrow as it is, where a defense system has its best chance. A scramjet removes that window. A supersonic combustion ramjet, a scramjet, compresses incoming air at hypersonic speed, mixes it with fuel, and produces continuous thrust. The engine does not carry its own oxidizer like a rocket does. It breathes. And unlike a glide vehicle, it does not slow down. It maintains hypersonic speed from ignition to impact. China tested its first wave rider, a platform designed to ride its own shockwaves to generate lift at extreme speeds, on August 3, 2018. The Xingkong 2, or Starry Sky 2, was launched from a solid rocket booster, separated, climbed to 30 kilometers, and then conducted extreme turning maneuvers at speeds between Mach 5.5 and Mach 6, sustaining those speeds for more than 400 seconds. The vehicle was recovered intact after landing in a designated target zone. Chinese officials called it a huge success and confirmed it had laid the engineering foundation for future Wave Rider weapons. That future arrived 7 years later. The CJ-1000 appeared at the 2025 Victory Day Parade and is described by Chinese defense media as the country's first operational land-based scramjet-powered hypersonic cruise missile. Estimated range is at least 2,500 kilometers. It is mounted on a diesel-electric hybrid transporter erector launcher, road mobile, and concealable. The scramjet engine sustains powered flight throughout cruise and terminal phases, at altitudes between 20 and 30 kilometers, where radar detection range is significantly reduced by the curvature of the Earth and the limitations of ground-based radar line of sight. A CJ-1000 does not glide to its target. It flies there under power at Mach 6, and it does not slow down. And then, in November 2025, a research team at China's National University of Defense Technology revealed something that does not fit any existing category. A morphing wing hypersonic missile. Variable geometry flight surfaces that change shape during flight at Mach 5, shifting the aerodynamic profile to optimize for either maximum speed or sustained maneuvering, depending on what the mission requires at that moment. No operational missile in any other country's inventory does this. The ability to switch between configurations mid-flight means that predicting the terminal approach angle, closing speed, or final trajectory becomes, in practical terms, a solved problem for the attacker and an unsolvable one for the defender. Chapter 7. What it means. 13 systems. 3 propulsion architectures. Every launch domain covered: land, sea, and air. The DF-ZF and the DF-17 struck first, breaking the physics problem open. The DF-26 and DF-26D extended the reach to Guam and beyond. The FOBS-HGV system removed the geographic safety of the South Pole approach. The CHASX-13 and KD-21 turned the bomber fleet into a hypersonic delivery network. The DF-27 made China the first nation to field a conventionally armed ICBM. The YJ-21, YJ-17, YJ-19, and YJ-20 gave the PLA Navy a layered anti-ship hypersonic capability across 4 different platforms and propulsion types. The Xingkong 2 proved the Wave Rider concept. The CJ-1000 operationalized it with sustained scramjet propulsion, and the NUDT morphing missile pointed toward a generation of weapons that do not yet exist anywhere else. The U.S. naval response has been structural. The Navy's shift toward distributed maritime operations, spreading assets rather than concentrating them in carrier strike groups, is a direct acknowledgement that concentrated forces present targets that China's missile inventory is now designed to service. THAAD, Patriot, and SM-6 were built for a threat environment that these weapons were specifically designed to circumvent. In its FY 2026 budget request, the Pentagon surged hypersonic weapons funding to nearly $4 billion, the largest single-year investment in the program's history. That number is a statement about urgency. China did not build this arsenal to display it at parades, though it does that too. It built it to reshape the calculation that any adversary must make before committing forces to the Western Pacific. Every ship, every base, every airfield within the range rings of these systems now sits inside a threat envelope with no reliable defense. That is the complete arsenal. 13 weapons. One message.